Lots of talk, of course, about migration. Well, as there always is at the moment, the Prime Minister went off to Albania. Apparently we're going to get return hubs. Only we're not now, because the Albanians said they're not going to let us have any in Albania, at least. Should they have just stuck to the Rwanda plan? What on earth do we do next? Anyway, let's talk to the Shadow Home Office Minister, Katie Lam. Katie, good morning to you. It's fascinating that amidst all of this, the Tories are bringing forward their deportation bill. I mean, great to some extent, but you're not going to get it through, are you?
It seems very unlikely with the way that Parliament is configured at the moment, but I think it's really important, as we keep seeing the government bring forward these headlines with no plan whatsoever actually to bring them into existence, that we keep bringing solid suggestions for new legislation to Parliament and unfortunately watch them keep voting them down.
Now, Katie, I'm looking at this bill. I've got it in front of me. Obviously, it's unlikely it'll be debated today, given everything else that's going on. But there's some incredibly sensible suggestions in here, disapplying the Human Rights Act from all immigration-related matters, which would stop these endless claims and these spurious human rights claims, which is exactly what's needed. So that's very good to see. But only just over a year ago, a number of us proposed amendments to the Rwanda bill that would have done exactly this. They were dismissed by the Conservative government, including many members of the shadow cabinet now, and we were told that there was absolutely no way it was needed, there was no way we would get it through. Why are the Conservatives now saying that those measures that we suggested are now essential?
Well, it's a terrible shame that they weren't passed before, but we are under new leadership. I wasn't a member of Parliament then, and I am now, and we're bringing forward everything that we can think of to solve this problem and secure the border.
Well, one of the issues is that all illegals who arrive in this country would be automatically deported. Deported to where?
That is the reason that the last government brought forward the Rwanda plan. So you mentioned this suggestion that the Prime Minister has made about return hubs in Eastern Europe. But the problem with them is that they would come at the end of the asylum process, at the end of all of the appeals. What the last government proposed was if you come here illegally, you will go to Rwanda, and that's the end of the story, because or you'll go home. If it's safe for you to go home, you'll go home. If you can't go home, or you won't tell us where your home is, then you go to Rwanda, and that remains the only logical solution that I have heard to the terrible problem that we have of people pouring over the channel.
Katie, I personally am sure that you're right about this, but what people will point out is that the last government could have done this, and one of the reasons that it didn't was that it didn't believe that enough Conservative MPs would vote for it. There are plenty of Conservative MPs who are, in principle, opposed to leaving the ECHR or notwithstanding the Human Rights Act. Are you convinced that a Conservative Party, should it win a majority in 2029, that it would be able to command the support of its MPs to pass such a bill as this?
Yes, I am, and I think you can see that from how the party voted for the amendment just last week. This is, or in fact on Monday, this is now something that everybody agrees is a terrible problem that can only be fixed this way.
It's going to be interesting to see what Reform do when this is debated, because, we're going to see an unofficial alliance.
There will be no pact with Reform. Kemi's been very clear about that. There are many years, I think it will be 4 years until the next general election, and of course we will have to see what happens over the coming years, but there will be no alliance with Reform.
Now, Katie, we know that the immigration issue is a European-wide problem. The Prime Minister's been in Albania. We know that the Italians have a deal with the Albanians because they have very similar problems to us, also finding huge problems with the ECHR. Would you be willing to support the Prime Minister in getting closer to the EU in order to solve some of these problems?
I think it depends the price for that. So there's a lot of discussion at the moment about a youth mobility scheme. If the EU want to return to anything that looks like free movement, that will make this problem even worse, the general problem even worse of how many people are coming here to this country. Those people will be coming legally rather than illegally. But the priority has to be to secure the border. If the Prime Minister is doing the right things to secure the border, I will very, very happily support him. At the moment, he's not. It's just theatre.
Yeah, well, which is interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, we've got the new EU deal that's going to have to be discussed. And it is very difficult to know what we should hope for with that, because anything the Prime Minister does, you're going to label as Brexit by the back door.
Not necessarily. There are lots of things that he could do that could and would be a success. But if he's going to sell out our fishing rights, if he is going to bring back something that looks even vaguely like free movement, I think that's totally wrong for the country and we'll oppose it.
OK. Katie, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? What fascinates me about fishing rights, and I don't know enough about it, to be fair, but when Nana went up to talk about Brexit with a load of fishermen a few months ago, none of the fishermen were happy, and they were all saying we voted for Brexit, we wouldn't do that again.
Yeah. Well, fishing's been used as a bargaining chip. The French are very keen to get their hands on our fish, and the problem with fishing is it's a very important and emotive industry, but it's something like 0.03% of GDP, so governments don't hold it in particularly high priority when it comes to negotiating.
Yeah, perhaps they should.
Have you been getting a load of spam in your email recently? What about random calls? It's really annoying, isn't it? Data brokers are out there collecting your personal information. Anything from your email, your full name, your address, and even your political affiliation. Cyber criminals can even use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick people into sending them money. And it gets even worse. People out there are getting huge loans taken out in their names without even knowing about it. But don't worry, because the sponsor of this video, Incogni, can help. They reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your information is removed from their databases. Incogni continues to make sure that your data is removed automatically from the internet via repeated removal requests. So, how can you get started? Well, step 1, hit the link in the description, create an Incogni account and tell us whose data you'd like removed. Step 2, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf. Step 3, sit back, relax and watch Incogni work. They will update consistently so you know when your data has been removed. Incogni is risk-free for 30 days, so you can try it for yourself and you'll get a free refund if the service isn't for you. So take back your personal data today with Incogni. Use the code GBNews using the link in the description below and you'll get 60% off an annual payment plan.
Of course, the government in response to this is saying, well, talking about these hubs was not on the agenda in Albania, but we know it was because it was leaked everywhere before the visit actually happened.
Well, this is the interesting thing. I mean, Keir Starmer yesterday was very keen to talk about how he was the first Prime Minister to go out to Albania, how much he wanted to sort of put in the sort of UK-Albania relationship. But, of course, then beforehand, officials were then started to downplay the prospect and saying he was talking about just general security, when, in fact, as we all know, that illegal migration is very much the top issue when it comes to internal talks between the two sides. And then, of course, we had that extraordinary press conference yesterday as well.
So Albania has these deals with Italy, although famously so far very few migrants, asylum seekers have actually gone to those hubs because the Italians have had, or none, because the Italians have had exactly the same problem with European rights judges and the same kind of claims. But nevertheless, why would Albania refuse to do a similar deal with Britain?
Well, in terms of sort of, I think, domestic political oppression is one reason why. He was talking there about loyal to the marriage of Italy, talking about the importance of having that relationship. I suppose it'd be a bit sort of akin to our relationship with Ireland in some respects. But I think that in terms of why you wouldn't want to do it, I suppose it's obvious is that no particularly wants illegal asylum seekers coming to their country. And I suppose that's the whole sort of idea about sort of incentives in all of this. Thus far, the only country we've seen in sort of 5 years of talks between the Conservatives and Labour governments, the only country that had any interest was Rwanda. And so we always hear these sort of briefings. It's a bit like sort of, I have a girlfriend, but she goes to another school. You don't know her. It's like all these unnamed countries. We're dealing with the West Balkans, we're dealing with sort of Bosnia, etc. But until we get over the line, Rwanda remains the only country to have shown any sort of formal public interest in this.
And yet, there is still an interest from our politicians to do it. There seems to be an acknowledgement that the United Nations is going to approve these schemes, which makes it legally all a bit easier. So it could be a solution. I mean, it really could be not quite Rwanda. I mean, Rwanda light, the Tories
Yes.
call it, don't they? But I mean, at least it could be something. It's just finding a location.
Absolutely, and I think that this is the thing that everyone talks about, whether they're Tories or Labour. One of the big ways in which it seems that there was a success in Australia was by having offshore processing. They look at countries where they've been able to deter kind of similar small boats arriving. Having a deterrent is the key thing. And of course, the idea is they won't be able to permanently settle in Britain. Now, the two problems with that, of course, is number one, no country wants to publicly go over the line and say all this. They're happy to have discussions, etc. But to date, it takes a long, long time to get an agreement. And of course, we've got to consider election cycles. And the other thing, of course, is about how do you process them? Do you process them before their legal avenues have been exhausted in the UK, or do you do it after? And the problem, of course, with what these kind of hubs would be is that you have to wait for them to go through all the hoops of the legal process before they got sent over there to have their claims processed.
And the fact that the Italians have had very similar problems to us does suggest that all roads lead to the ECHR. The reason that European countries can't deport people who are found to be there illegally, can't deport people once their asylum claims have been scotched, is that under the interpretation of the ECHR, all sorts of spurious human rights claims are put into place. So, is this the end of the ECHR?
I think that it's certainly coming under strain, certainly, because it was designed for a world of the 1940s and 50s, which seems to have sort of little bearing to the realities of what sort of modern welfare schemes and modern incentives are. That said, I think that it's going to be something that takes many years to resolve. I think that in terms of the UK politics, the Conservative Party is going to move to a much harder position on this, and abroad, obviously, you're going to see lots of different negotiations going on. It may just come down to countries disregarding individual judgments they don't like. I think the French have some form in this area, the Italians too. But of course, Keir Starmer did say in one of his first speeches, sent Lord Homer out there, said he would never leave the ECHR. So it remains to be seen. Although I would say from these briefings, ministers are clearly getting frustrated, and until they come up with a solution, they will have nothing to stop illegal migrants being deterred.